Okay, this is my in-depth project presentation. Climate change is the result of human activity. Climate change, as described by the National Academy of Sciences, the Royal Society, is one of the defining issues of our time, and there is no arguing its relevance and importance in the world. The reason why I chose this topic is because I want to dig deeper into the black and white picture painted by the media and the politicians. I really want to find out what the scientists mean and what the science is all about. Therefore, I made a statement: climate change is the result of human activity, and I'm going to discuss that in this presentation. The basic theory behind climate change is the assumption of an energy balance, that the Earth has something called an energy balance, where the incoming radiation from the Sun equals the outgoing radiation from the Earth. This way, the Earth keeps a stable temperature, and the way it manages to keep an energy balance is because we have an atmosphere filled with greenhouse gases, and among them carbon dioxide. And when the radiation reaches the atmosphere, some of the radiation is reflected out to space, while most of it continues down to Earth and heats the Earth. Then the radiation is reflected out to space again, but a part of it is reflected down to Earth, so that the Earth is heated and we keep a stable temperature, as you can see on this picture. So the main argument for those who mean that we humans are the reason for the latest warming in the climate and the climate change, they think that we upset the energy balance. Humans upset the energy balance by releasing greenhouse gases, and among them carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere, making it thicker, and thereby trapping more radiation inside the Earth's atmosphere. And then you have an imbalance. You have more incoming radiation than you have outgoing, which leads to a warming. And they have done research on the CO2 in the atmosphere and found that this is human emitted CO2. That is something they can decide on, or find out if it really is us humans who emit it, and not just through natural sources like volcanoes and such things. So you can see from this graph right here, this shows the carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere and the global average temperature since 1880. And you see a significant rise in both temperature and the carbon dioxide levels. And then they think then that the temperature follows the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. So the higher the carbon dioxide levels, the higher the temperature, as you can see from the graph right there. On the other hand, you have the climate skeptics who believe that the temperature doesn't have such strong connection to the CO2 level in the atmosphere, and they often use this graph to undermine that. And there is a fact actually that there hasn't been any warming since 1997. We have had a stable temperature since 1997, and as you can see from this graph, it actually shows that. And while we have had a stable temperature, the carbon dioxide levels have shot through the roof and continue to rise. So they suggest that the temperature has less connection to the CO2, and there's other forms of natural influences on the climate that changes the climate more than we humans do. And then we get into something called climate sensitivity, which I will address later in the presentation. And here we can look at the temperature the last 2,000 years. I have two graphs here, one from the IPCC and one from representing the climate skeptics. I found this graph at a website from a scientist called Dr. Royce Spencer, a former NASA scientist. And if we look at this blue graph right here, we see that the norm the last 2,000 years hasn't been a linear stable temperature. However, it has a trend of warming and cooling. And you can see that the medieval warm period actually on this graph was as hot or even hotter than the temperature today. And you see that the temperature has gone down to almost minus 0.6 degrees from the normal. And then we had the little ice age. And then after that you see the temperature rise again. And on the IPCC graph, it doesn't have the same highlight of the medieval warm period nor the little ice age. It's more flat and rises more to the end. And the reason why the graphs are different is because they're based on different measurements. So that's why. But both graphs agree on one thing, and that's clear warming since 1880. And they both show that. However, the climate skeptics use this blue graph to again suggest that there are natural causes working in on the climate more than we humans can do. And even before the Industrial Revolution, before we started emitting greenhouse gases, the temperature rose and sank. And I'm going to mention some of the climate forcing elements. And by climate forcing, I mean to either make the climate warmer or colder. And some of the human-made forcings are burning of fossil fuel, deforestation, and some natural occurring are change in the sun energy output, the Earth's orbit around the sun, and volcanic activity, El Nino and La Nina. And climate skeptics often refer to these climate forcings as the primary forcings rather than burning of fossil fuel and deforestation, as some of the climate alarmists refer to them. They mean that we humans are the main reason behind climate change. And when we talk about climate forcing, we also have to talk about climate feedback and something called climate sensitivity. And Dr. Royce Spencer refers to this as cause and effect. Climate forcing is the cause, and climate feedback is the effect it has on the climate. Forcing climate positively or negatively, positively making it warmer, negatively making it colder. And you ask the question, how will the forcing affect the temperature? That's the feedback. And you can look at some everyday examples from the picture here. Positive feedback could be your account balance grows, you earn more interest, and your account balance grows again. That's a positive spiral. A negative feedback could be your body temperature rises, your body sweats more, and your body temperature drops. And this thinking applies to climate change as well, climate science. And then we talk about climate sensitivity, and by that it meant that you ask the question, how much will a certain forcing affect the climate? And typically the IPCC and the climate alarmists think that the climate is very sensitive. They think that only a small amount of forcing is needed to alter the temperature, while the more climate skeptics think that the climate is insensitive and it has to be a more strong forcing for the climate to change. And therefore, our emission of greenhouse gases isn't enough of an explanation to be the sole reason to the warming. I find that this is really where the dispute lies. Many of the scientists are agree on many things, and most of them agree on that there has been warming, but they don't agree on how sensitive the climate is to a certain amount of forcing. And there's where the research, much of the research is now, and they trying to find out how sensitive the climate is actually. So, as a conclusion, I would say that the media and the politicians are the ones who give a very one-sided view of the climate debate. They often refer to clear facts, undisputable truth, and the science is settled, etc. Um, but Emil A. Røyrvik wrote an article in Aftenposten who said that doubt and skepticism shouldn't be undercommunicated, and that when media and politicians give such a view on the climate debate, they have an unscientific belief in science, and because science isn't about being 100% right. Science is about self-criticism and finding errors, being open for criticism, and finding finding a way forward by looking at errors and trying to improve all the time. Science is seldom settled for good. So I I personally think that the climate change is a combination of both human and natural influence, as it says in our geography book. That is likely that the climate changes by itself, uh, and we have seen that from temperatures from many years back. But it's also likely that we add to this greenhouse effect and influence on the climate by emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. However, there is a it's not only humans; it is a combination, I think. And I think it's always important to be skeptic about what you hear from politicians and media. Don't believe everything they say. Um, Always be skeptic. And that brings me to sources, because when we talk about sources, we always have to be critical and skeptic. That's very important when it comes to sources. And when I found sources to this topic, I found that many sources have the same facts, but they emphasize on different material in the facts, and so that I uh, I always checked the facts up against different sources, so that I had more than two sources on every fact. And I used a lot of different sources, among them governmental, independent science centers, and independent scientists. The governmental sources tended to be climate on the climate alarmist side, if I can call it that, and some of the independent scientists tend to be on the climate skeptic side. And for example, drroyspencer.com and klimarealistene.com and NASA, NASA Climate Reality Project, and the IPCC, for instance, climate alarmist sites. And so yeah, this is still an active field of research. So new facts come out every month at least. So it's important to stay updated. These are the sources for my pictures. Thank you for your attention.